Well, hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today live as we have an On the Record with Ashley Hinson. It's a pleasure to represent Iowa's 2nd District in Congress. And of course, always a fun experience to welcome special guests to help bring context to the issues of the day and what we're working on for you in Congress. And so today I'm very excited to have a very special guest, a colleague of mine from my freshman class. We're now both sophomores, both serve on the Appropriations Committee, Representative Tony Gonzales from Texas. Tony, welcome to On the Record with me. I appreciate you taking the time. Can you tell everyone who's watching today just a little bit more about your district and your experience in representing border communities? Because you have quite a bit of the southern border in your district.
That's right. Thank you for having me, Ashley. I appreciate it, and it's great to serve with you in Congress. You've done an amazing job. I know you yourself have made several trips down to the border, which is incredible. The district I represent is Texas's 23rd district. It stretches from San Antonio to El Paso. It's over 823 miles of the southern border. Places you may have heard of like Eagle Pass and Del Rio and Uvalde and El Paso are all in my district, essentially at the epicenter of what has happened. It's a predominantly Hispanic district. Over 70% of the district's Hispanic, and it's larger than 30 states, 29 counties, a lot of ground to cover. It takes me 10 hours to get from one end to the other. And I was, and Ashley's been there before. I remember we went to Del Rio just after the incident with the Haitians over a year ago.
Yes, and yeah, I have been to Del Rio Eagle Pass. Tony was gracious enough to invite a group of us down to experience a little bit of what his border communities are experiencing every single day with that massive influx. We met with sheriffs and law enforcement, heard directly from them about how this is straining their resources, even at the local level. Obviously, you've done a lot of work on Operation Stone Garden and making sure those resources are there to help support your local law enforcement as they are truly being pulled away from keeping your communities safe to help with what's happening at the border. So we've been talking about this, why does it matter for a state like Iowa? It's because the drugs are coming across the southern border, the humanitarian crisis. We have a number of solutions that we have consistently talked about when it comes to securing our southern border. But one that keeps coming up at a lot of my town halls that I've done over the past 2 years, and when I talk to constituents, is Title 42. It's been in the news a lot. Obviously, the courts have had their say in what's going on with Title 42, and more to come there. But can you talk a little bit about what that really means for border districts like yours, what that really means for national security, and what that means for immigration policy?
Yeah, and having members, and I love that you do this show and you bring people from all over the place, and having a member like me from Texas. I mean, everything is interconnected in today's environment. So you hit it right on the head. The border doesn't stop at the border. I mean, it impacts us all. So I love the fact that you're incorporating everybody in there. One of the things with Title 42, essentially, Title 42 is the last Trump policy. President Biden has essentially stripped away everything else. And I understand that. Look, he's the president of the United States. You could have a different philosophy of things. But if you strip something away, you normally replace it with something else. And if you replace that with something else and it doesn't go well, then you replace that with something else. And that is where the administration has failed to act. They just strip things away without including things that may solve it. Title 42 essentially allows Border Patrol agents to expel someone. I'd argue it's an antiquated kind of policy. The pandemic is essentially over. And myself and others, many of us have said, hey, Title 42 isn't a long-term solution. But once again, it is literally the last Band-Aid keeping the tidal wave from coming over. And we really have tried to push the administration to go, hey, what's next? What solutions do you have? And that's where they really have failed. I will highlight one other thing, because a lot of people talk about the policy and the different bills, and all that's important. But one of the things that people don't realize maybe as much is Ashley and I, we both serve on the Appropriations Committee. And I always joke there's 3 types of members of Congress. You got Republicans, you got Democrats, and you got appropriators. And as an appropriator, you can essentially fund things that meaningful, impactful things. So regardless of whatever the rhetoric is, regardless of the politics outside, Ashley's done a great job of helping fund some of these things like mental health, like technology for the border, adding more agents, Border Patrol agents. So while Title 42 and the policy absolutely important to solving it long term, I think as appropriators, we've kind of been the stopgap, if you will.
Right, providing those resources with creative solutions, right? It's saying, hey, you are not enforcing the laws as they exist right now. So how can we provide CBP and all of these agencies, ICE, with the tools that they need to be able to enforce the laws? And I think we both understand that those department heads, the agency heads, so the Department of Homeland Security, Secretary Mayorkas, has to come before us and answer our questions if they want money for their budgets. And we have some tough questions coming for these men and women coming up as appropriators through this process this year. So I think it's a great opportunity for you as taxpayers to know we are being judicious with how this money is being spent. We want to make sure it's targeted to where the need is specifically. Tony, you talked about technology, the drone technology that's now being able to be used as a force multiplier for our Border Patrol agents so they can track the nefarious activity while still responding to emergent situations that they have to be pulled to is so important. So we're looking at all of those things as solutions to this crisis at our southern border. So one other thing, though, I think that's really important is, we talk a lot about our law enforcement and the stress that's put on them. This has put an incredible stress on the brave men and women who are our line of defense at the border, our CBP agents. And I know that there have been an increased number of suicides with CBP agents because they are stressed. They're under fire, literally, as we've seen down at the southern border. So can you talk a little bit more about the TAPS Act, which you introduced? And I know Washington, D.C. loves its acronyms, but this is a really critical piece of legislation. I'm proud to be a co-sponsor on your piece of legislation, Tony.
Yeah, look, I mean, Ashley, you hit it right on the head. Well, there's all these things that need to happen, and we House Republicans have really highlighted some of this. We also did it. You and I haven't stopped and just said, pointed fingers and said, oh, Biden is the reason for everything. We've looked for solutions, and I think part of that is to find solutions that everyone can agree on. And part of the TAPS Act, last year there were 14 Customs and Border Patrol agents that committed suicide. This is a historic number. So while on the outside you can say, oh, everything's going perfectly fine. Well, if everything's so fine, why are your people killing themselves? It's one of those things that you can't hide from. And it's another one to go, hey, can we all agree this is a bad thing? And how do we help that? So the TAPS Act essentially, I spent 20 years in the military. I spent 5 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. And it reminds me of during the height of Iraq, where you had a lot of suicides. And anytime you'd ask the Department of Defense, hey, how's everything going? They're always like, oh, yeah, it's going perfectly fine. We're doing all these different things. So you almost need an outside entity to come in and give you a little spot check. And that's basically what it does. It creates this task force that comes out and does a spot check, if you will, on DHS to go, maybe everything isn't fine, and maybe we can find some solutions to it. That's one. And another one is, mentioned Stone Garden a little earlier as well. This is money that goes directly to sheriffs and local law enforcement. And in my counties, some of my counties are larger than states, and you've got 8 or 9 a sheriff and 8 or 9 deputies that have to patrol the whole area. And so, in these rural communities, they're the ones doing all the heavy lifting. So these Stone Garden funds reimburses them. Right now, there's currently $90 million that are going towards that. I've been pushing to increase that. But to your point on kind of fiscal responsibility, it's not just about throwing money at a problem and giving yourself a high five and saying, we've secured the border because we've thrown all this money. It's about holding it accountable and how do you spend that money? And is it and figuring out those ways. And I know, Ashley, it's very important to you to make sure that our taxpayer dollars are we have that oversight over it.
Right. Well, when they were trying to, for instance, transfer money to focus on replanting grasses at the southern border rather than focusing on funding our Border Patrol agents, I think that is a clear prioritization issue. And that's the kind of thing we're going to spotlight while still arguing that those funds should be going to help support our law enforcement. This is a national security issue. We've seen the things that have gotten across the southern border, and that's why it matters to a place like Iowa. That's why it matters to your state as well. We have to be a safe country. We have to be a nation of laws, but we can be pragmatic in making sure we're finding solutions that actually will work and are not only attainable, but something that our CBP and ICE can actually execute on as well. So I know that you share in that priority in making sure we're being smart and presenting those solutions. Where can people find out more information about these? I mean, you have an official House website as well, correct?
Yeah, gonzales.house.gov is our official website, and I'm on Twitter as well, Tony Gonzales. I want to highlight one other thing too, because I think you really understand this. A lot of new members do, but it's an area that gets muddied. Border security and immigration are two separate things, and you can be absolutely hawkish on border security and not want bad actors and drugs and terrorists to come in our country, but yet you can still be warm and welcoming to those that want to come and work and do those type of things. I have a huge ag district, and this is an area where immigrants coming through the right way, the legal process, can fill these jobs. And on one side, you've got I want an open border, and that's clearly wrong. And I just don't want the Republican Party to go on the other side and say closed border, we don't want anyone here. I believe we're a country of laws. We have to have our laws enforced, one, but also those that are abiding by the law, don't punish them, and so it's a nuanced approach, to be able to go have both. And it's difficult in this political environment, but I think this is an area where we need people to come and fill these jobs, but we need them coming through the front door.
Yeah, I agree with that. We need to incentivize legal immigration, disincentivize illegal immigration. But I'm sure you hear the same thing from your constituents, Tony, that workforce is the number one issue we hear. People want to grow their businesses. People want that opportunity. And so, but let's just make sure we're doing it the right way. And I think it's very clear that there are pragmatic people who want to get to work on solutions on both of those issues. So Tony, thank you so much for joining us for this edition of On the Record. For everyone watching, if you don't subscribe to my newsletter yet, make sure you're doing that. We put a lot of good information in there about the hot topics of the week, our district stops, what we're doing for you in the district. We promise not to spam you. We send it out once a week just so you can stay informed as to the work I'm doing for you in Washington, D.C. So again, thank you, Tony, for doing this, for all the work you're doing to help draw attention to the issues at the southern border and the real solutions that we continue to offer as House Republicans. So I appreciate you, and you're a trusted friend and a dear colleague. So everybody watching, thank you so much for joining us for On the Record. Have a great Friday.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thanks, Tony.